Michael Yenyo for the board due to illness.
So moved by Sophia.
Second, Apodaca.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Danielle, roll call, please.
President Beach,
Present.
Vice President Say,
Here?
Clerk Nishii,
Here?
Board Member Dr. Apodaca,
Here.
Board Member Dr. Rios, Board Member Yu. Here. Thank you.
All right, report out on closed session items. This evening, we will be discussing the following items in closed session. Public employee appointment, position superintendent, Government Code Section 54-957. Mr. Clerk, are there any public comments on closed session?
I don't see any.
May I have a motion to move to closed session?
So moved?
Second by Sophia.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Be seated. Thank you, sir. All right, superintendent search process discussion. I wanted to first announce that I excused the executive cabinet from our closed session meeting and also from this public meeting in an abundance of caution and for transparency and fairness for all the candidates that may apply. At this time, I'd like to call on Leadership Associates, Dr. Peggy Lynch and Dr. David Verdugo. Welcome.
Great. Thank you very much. We're very happy to be here. We have an agenda that Danielle was able to provide you, and if you want to pull that out, we'll kind of work through that, kind of give you an overview of what we are going to do tonight, the search process, kind of an update of all of those kinds of things. We have some tasks we have to get done, including the timeline, the list of people we're going to do for community and staff input, so we need to work through those details. Just for public, both of us are former superintendents. I was with San Diego Union High School District for my last 7 years as superintendent, and I was also with Brea Olinda Unified as superintendent before that, 24 years in Tustin Unified through a variety of roles. So, and been with Leadership Associates since 2009.
David Verdugo, retired superintendent from Paramount Unified School District. I spent 9 years in Paramount as the superintendent. Prior to that, the deputy superintendent of schools in Placentia or Belinda.
Great. We want to just kind of do a quick review of the search process since we mostly met with the committee, and I know you've probably seen the details, but we want to just walk through a little bit about that. We'll kind of come back to that with the timeline because that's also when we know we're going to have to put things in and when you can be there, when you need to be there, when you don't need to be there as a board. So the first part is really tonight. This is really kind of framing the whole search process, when we're going to do things, who we're going to talk to, what the process is for vetting candidates, all the things that we go through, that's tonight, just to give you that background. Phase 2 is really all the input. Tonight we're going to get your input. What do you want in the new superintendent? What should they be like professionally, personally, experientially? Any of those kinds of things. And then what are some of the strengths of the district? Why does someone want to come here and be a superintendent? And what are the challenges? What are the things you see coming up, current, whatever it might be that this person, the new person, is going to need to tackle? Okay, so we'll talk about that. Phase 3 is writing up a position description. We take all of the input and we write a position description. It synthesizes all that we heard into the key factors of what you're looking for, what's needed in this district, what's going to make a person successful in this district. And we'll run that through you, and then it posts on our website, it'll post on your website. The phase 4 is all the advertising, the recruiting, the vetting, reference checking. The reference checking vetting is probably the most important thing we do, although recruiting can be, although you're not going to have trouble recruiting to get to this district. But the vetting, the really good reference checking, that takes the most important, and it's the most important. We don't want you to be surprised. We don't want to be surprised by anything we don't know about the candidates. So we work hard on that one. The selection of the finalists, we'll meet with you to go over all the candidates. We'll talk through what we think are good matches. You'll make the decision who you interview. That's your choice. We'll tell you there may be some candidates we don't think you should, and we'll tell you why, but ultimately it's your choice. Okay? And then, of course, the final interviews, we'll schedule that. And then the last part is a validation process. That's where if you want to go visit the person's district, if they're not an inside candidate, you'll go visit, you'll talk to people on the board, you'll talk to people from other groups to get to verify really that this is the right choice for you. And then, of course, it's all the contract negotiations and the work you'll have to do that. The contract itself is approved at a regularly scheduled board meeting. It cannot be a special meeting, so it's always a regularly scheduled board meeting. Okay? So that's kind of the overview of what we're going to do in the search. We need a liaison from the board that David and I can speak with. It's usually the board president, and so if that's your choice, we'll do that. That's if we need something or we're not sure, we'll run something by, it would be usually it's the president, so that's kind of your call as a board. Obviously, a lot of our work is done with your executive assistant because we have logistical things to get done. She'll be the busiest during the input part, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So first thing is board contact, Brad, that'll be you as president.
I'm happy to do it, and the board, I think they know I've shared information with them throughout this whole process, so I will be transparent and notify all of them of any little
Perfect.
thing that you bring to me if they're okay with that.
Okay, that's
Is there
great.
consensus for me to be the liaison? Okay.
Our executive assistant is Penny Pyle, and Penny I sent a ton of things to Danielle already. It includes things like, it will have samples, press releases, sample things, how do we set up the online survey, any of those kinds of things. Penny will work directly with Danielle to get that all the logistical things kind of organized. The biggest time for her is really when we're going to do staff and community input where we might be here in person. We have to logistically work out the details of who we meet with, when we meet, where we meet, all those kinds of things. We have sample schedules. Each of those sessions is about a half an hour long. We usually spend about an hour with the cabinet talking to them. We spend time with your principals, and we'll run through the list of people that we would want to talk to.
And Peggy, if I could make a quick comment here, Danielle, during this process, if you could report directly to me, just so we remove your boss, who's the interim superintendent, from the chain of command, and you can go to them or me, and we'll keep all staff
Okay.
out of it otherwise. Is that okay?
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So that's that part. We'll need a couple things from Danielle up front. We'll need to confirm all their email addresses and phone numbers, so if you can get me all that. And we need a copy of the current superintendent's contract. Now, as interim, I don't know if he has the same contract as Mary Sue did, but whichever one is probably the best one for us to work with. We need copies of those. Okay.
We approved it a few board meetings ago, and she should have access to it.
Okay. So the next item is number 5, the input from the board, and David's going to kind of walk through that. And you also have in that packet, in that set of material, a list of potential stakeholder sessions. So you can take a look at that. Some of these may not be valid in your district. Some of them may be not the same titles, but we'll kind of walk through that. So Dave?
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are on number 5, the discussion of the use of input from the board, the trustees, stakeholder groups, and the online survey results. The very specific input from the board is actually down below on that agenda, on number 11. So we'll wait to get to that specifically as it relates to us acquiring from you those characteristics, those traits, that information that you believe are important in your next superintendent. But as Peggy mentioned, as Dr. Lynch mentioned, in your folder there are examples of the groups to invite for stakeholder input. And if you would take a moment to look at that, these again are just samples that you could be added to or deleted. But if you'll take a moment to look at that, this is pretty standardized with regards to the groups that we reach out to or have a desire to reach out to that provide us input with respect to the stakeholder input that gets combined in the position description as well. So again, if you wouldn't mind taking a quick look at that, are there any other very specific groups that you think I should add to this list?
I have a suggestion,
Sure.
Mr. President.
Dr. Rios?
Our diversity, our DUI committee, I think, would be a great group to talk to. Diversity.
E.
DUE.
Excellent.
And what we'll end up needing, obviously, from Danielle is contact information, but I'm sure she has a lot of that kind of thing and set it up. I want to also say that sometimes we combine some of these groups. So, for example, when you get down to city council, city manager, they don't have to be separate. The Chamber of Commerce, sometimes we can put some, like, community leaders together in one group because, in all honesty, they don't come to a lot of the meetings, but we sometimes put them in one group so that at least we get some of them. And again, some of those might be Zoom, that might be easier for them via Zoom to do those kinds of meetings. So we can combine these if needed.
Clerk Nishii?
So maybe potentially former board members would be a good resource to look at, and retirees, even though it may not necessarily be part of the K-12, they're part of the adult education, they have a big interest, and they're a big part of our community. So senior groups, there's, I think, some in Hawaiian Gardens and Cerritos and Artesia. So those would be relevant groups, I think. I didn't see seniors, so.
Okay. I've been able to capture that. Let me just point in the direction of number 15, service groups. Is there an active Kiwanis, or is Rotary the most prevalent?
There's a Cerritos Artesia Rotary. There's also a Cerritos Optimist Club, which are there any others?
So
Oh, and
Optimist
Sir
too.
Optimist International, yes.
What about our,
Sophia?
thank you, President. What about our past superintendent, former, which is Dr. Smart? You probably know him well, too. So are we really good interest in contact him? Give some input from that.
So number 2, you have superintendent. That's the outgoing.
Yes.
That would be the case, yes.
And in this case, it would probably be Dr. I don't, probably not interim, because he hasn't been that long in that role, so probably the former superintendent. But those are people we can call directly. I know Dr. Smuts well, and so we can even if we don't have to have them in person, we can certainly talk to them.
Anybody else? Okay.
And if there happens to be kind of an 11th hour idea or thought, please provide that to us, and we'll make sure that we add that accordingly.
Do you have an education foundation?
Yes, ABC Education Foundation, that's a great
It's on there.
addition.
Yeah, I just want to make sure they have one, some districts don't.
Yep.
If there are any specific business partners that you think we should meet with, or?
The Chamber of Commerce is pretty strong. There's a Cerritos one, and I believe Long Beach Lakewood, or I think Lakewood has a chamber also.
Okay.
And that might be the example that Dr. Lynch was talking about, where we combine rather than separate out.
Sue, you?
I think Ernie mentioned about the seniors, but there's, senior groups, different senior groups throughout the community. I think contacting some of the presidents or the leaders and inviting them would be great too, because they're all residents here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Rios?
Other people that I like to see included, and this could be in the business partners, would be our local electeds. We have very close relationships with our various city council members.
That's
Some
under
of them-
17, I think, city council members, city
Oh, I
managers.
missed that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is very standardized.
Yeah,
We
and
do
that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very important.
Thank you.
Ernie Nishii?
Sorry, one more time. Would faith-based groups be appropriate, like various local churches that are relatively strong in the area? Not necessarily just to have a religion in it, but to provide their perspective. Would that be something appropriate or acceptable?
Sure.
Absolutely. We do have that occasionally come forward. Again, as you mentioned, perhaps the strength or the involvement in the district accordingly. In terms of distinguishing which faith groups, we can, again, make it generic and have that invite go out to several organizations.
Back to you.
Okay, great. Following that, the next bullet, right, is the position description. But again, we'll be in the process of developing or designing that according to the stakeholder input that's provided to us. And of course, prior to publishing that position description, we would need to obtain the board's approval of that. And so, as we acquire the stakeholder input, we will begin to develop the position description. That is very, very important, obviously. That's going to be the basis for perhaps interested parties looking at that and to try to determine on their own whether or not there's a match and a fit to this particular school district.
We also like to get a copy, some kind of, sort of, if you will, a description of the community or a narrative about the community, a narrative about the district. Sometimes the city has a blurb, if you will, about them as a city. We want that kind of thing, or a narrative about the community. We want the same thing about the district. That might be something on your website. It's usually a paragraph. It's not super long, but it's something that helps. We put that in the position description.
We have one, and our communication
And
officer is
Scott's
here, so.
taking notes over there.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Excellent. The next item is the online survey. And what I would bring to your attention in your packet is a sample of the ABC Unified Online Survey. We have found this to be extremely helpful as we attempt to solicit input from the various students, staff, parents, and community. We believe there's going to be a high volume of, ladies and gentlemen, students, community members filling this out. But it is an anonymous survey, and the items that are asked are the same items that we ask if we are personally speaking to anyone as well. So you may want to take just a few minutes to look through the survey itself.
And ultimately, when we finish all the input, by the way, you'll get all the documents of the input we've taken, but you're also going to get the results of the survey in graph format. And you'll see then all the comments that people made as well. It's a little bit of a self-study, if you will, for the school district. How are people feeling about us? What are they thinking? So we think this is really helpful for you as well, not only for the search, but also just in general to know what people are thinking.
It's actually an item that's similar to an executive summary that will help you as you go forward with your new superintendent in terms of some of the challenges and strengths that are identified in this particular survey. Let's see. We also review the survey. We will set a certain amount of time for that survey to take place. In this case, that survey would last about a week out there to your public, but we will monitor that. Should we believe that there's a need for additional time, we can certainly add to that. Should there be a need for your site principals to perhaps emphasize it to their particular community or their stakeholders, we can do that as well. But we monitor that survey quite closely. We have found, as Dr. Lynch was about to mention, that the survey is a very, very great tool for us to utilize in respect to the stakeholder input that adds to the information and the input on the skill set, the experiences, the characteristics that one might be looking for within this school district.
Question?
Any questions there?
Sue, you.
So these survey, are these the actual questions? That's gonna
That
be-
is correct.
I see. This is all just write-in, right? Fill-in.
Yes.
Yes.
I wonder, just want to make a quick suggestion,
Sure.
if it's easier, like pre-made answers and then other. That would probably be easier for people taking the survey to actually kind of click, unless
But they have a
actually
lot
want
of
to.
these to do on that one
Oh.
page where they have characteristics as
I
well.
see.
And then they can add all the comments they want to.
Okay.
Right.
So that, we ask them for the strengths and challenges. We ask that, we ask them to identify how they're filling it out. Is they a parent? Are they a staff member? Because it gives us a little sense of where people are coming from on the survey. But then the last parts are the desired professional experience, the professional leadership characteristics, and the personal characteristics you want. And they can, some people add more when they start to make comments, which is fine. So if it doesn't get at something you want us to add, let us know.
Okay.
But there is a narrative opportunity as well. And then we review that prior to its submission or information to you in case we need to redact anything. I would ask, however, if I may, trustees, what languages should we have this survey in?
For sure Spanish, and then probably Mandarin, Korean,
Hindi,
East Indian, well, a lot. We have a very diverse community.
Vietnamese,
So the more the better, really.
just major languages, right?
But
We
for
can't
sure,
cover like
Mandarin,
20.
Korean, Spanish,
So
Tagalog,
Spanish, Mandarin, Korean, Vietnamese, and English.
or Tagalog, even above Vietnamese probably, but.
Yeah, Tagalog.
So we may need help on some of that.
Yes.
We have several of these, but I don't
We
think we
can-
have all of them.
We can facilitate that.
Yeah, I think we have enough staff on,
Okay.
with all those languages.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Two more people, Dr. Rios?
So just for clarification, so you're going to have survey in addition to the forms?
These are the surveys.
And that will be, you'll be gathering input both ways?
Correct.
Online and in person.
Got it.
Right.
A suggestion maybe for our staff, digital divide is a true challenge here in our district. And so it's going to be important, I think, in certain part of the district to really reach out to people and either provide technology at school sites, assistance, logging in, so that we can make sure that we get as much input as possible.
And we have established that type of opportunity as well, and we can help. We work with your tech department as well, and so should there be a need for a higher degree of technology needed, let's say in Hawaiian Gardens, we would certainly be helping in that regard. And then personally showing up to a forum or to a session, we would be available for that as well.
Thank you.
I think too, it's helpful to use your principals on some of this because they're really good at communicating to staff and to parents and students because students can fill this out obviously, that this survey is available. And we have had principals make their computer rooms available after school for people to come in and do them if they don't have access another way. So there are ways for us to do it as well. I think in a couple districts they've used the public library, to have people be able to go in and do it online there. So we can figure out ways to get to those people as well as what we do in person.
And as I think more about this entire process, Mr. Smith is going to be instrumental in the communication piece. So definitely getting it to the principals and then them sharing it with everybody in their chain would be perfect. Dr. Apodaca?
Thank you, Mr. President. So two things. One, adding on to what Board Member Yu was saying, I think, if I understand correctly, and this is probably my concern too, is you're doing a combination of qualitative and quantitative. How are you going to take these open-ended, qualitative, right? Just they can put anything in there. How are you guys going to codify those? Are you going to lump them into certain categories? I mean, I guess my question is, are we going to have a word cloud? What's going to come back from this that we're not going to see from just keeping it, where they can rank what's the most important and what isn't?
With respect to that, we will most definitely begin to see some themes that are existing out there, regardless of whether it's a personal one-on-one conversation or whether it's the survey that we draw some of these themes from. So generally speaking, we're able to fairly quickly begin to see these themes rise to the top, and we capture those, particularly in terms of the number of times that we see some of those topics or themes come forward. Okay. Should it have been mentioned in a low volume kind of way, it does not necessarily rise to the top. Doesn't mean that we don't label it or display it, but at the same time, it's not something that has a multiple aspect to it.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure if there's somebody that's going to be codifying it and putting it, so okay, that answers my question. Thank you. And then second question is actually this is probably maybe some direction for staff, or in this case, Scott or Danielle. So at the city council meetings like Hawaiian Gardens, they'll read, they're usually pretty good. If we were to say there's please check our website or check the Facebook, whatever, social media page, there for the next week, there's going to be a survey open. Please, it's in Spanish, it's in English, please log on and click it. They're usually pretty good about things like that. So, I mean, at this point, it's all hands, so if maybe we could reach out to the city managers or whoever does the agendas for council, if they'd be so kind to include our survey in there.
I think you're right, Dr. Apodaca. There's kind of a blast out system opportunity as well there. And of course, we often refer your stakeholders back to the website where it's located as well, and it's user-friendly with respect to being able to get on the website and take the survey.
Okay.
We'll work with your tech staff to get it posted on your website so people can link right onto it. It's just the messaging has to come from you that it's there.
Right.
Because we obviously wouldn't be able to do that. But we get such good response on this. I mean, we just get so much input, and you're going to get every bit of it. You're going to have volumes to read when you see the survey results, and as well as what we take notes on, because you're going to get all of that.
And final question, I imagine this has a mobile UI, correct? If access is a concern, they can use their smartphone or tablet as opposed to using a desktop or a
Yes.
laptop. Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Our expectancy is that you're going to have thousands of people fill out this survey.
Sophia Say.
Thank you, President. Yeah, I too have same concern on this page of the question you had to fill in the blank. If you can come out certain thing like drop down so they can pick. You have to think about when they use a computer. If you recommend use a school computer, they might not have access to. They have them to write like Chinese characters. I mean, you have to change instead of use a keyboard, you have to use the screen to write it. So that's a lot of computer skills in there require. Do we have the service there or not? That need to be taken into the consideration. Because I use I use the iPad. You know, I use a keyboard for typing English, but I use the screen to handwriting my information there. So
We'll check on it.
that's a lot of issue there.
Yeah.
That create a lot of handicap in there.
I think we feel confident that the vast majority of the languages that need to be available, we have most of those translations accordingly. But there may be some that will need some district assistance on.
Yeah, they have to be really cautious and watch on that because people cannot just type the language they want to type. Thank you.
I have a couple questions or comments. First one is, have you used this exact format survey before and gotten good results from it?
Yes.
We have utilized this standardized survey, and we have had outstanding, by outstanding, I mean not only the high volume, but the information that is being provided back to us that we include in the position description.
Because I like that there's a ranking section and then also a write-in, because people might have unique circumstances or things that are important to them that wouldn't be in a checkbox format,
Correct.
but they can write it here. So I
Correct.
do like that about it. My second one is, as I think about the time frame being 1 week, my thought is it should probably be 2 weeks. If we're talking about a council meeting, they meet every 2 weeks, we meet every 2 weeks to really get the word out and get max input. I don't know if my colleagues agree, but I think 2 weeks would be more appropriate. Dr. Apodaca?
Mr. President, to add on to that, typically our meetings alternate. In some cases, they might be the same night, but in Hawaiian Gardens, like, we meet this week, they're meeting next, and so on. So I second that. I think that'd be great.
Is there a consensus that we'd like 2 weeks on the survey?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we,
And that's fine. It's
Okay,
easy.
Absolutely.
thank you.
When we do the timeline, we're going to change the timeline. We have the draft of it, but we'll adjust the timeline. We'll get that reposted, and we'll, for us, logistically, one of the big ones is setting the deadline, because that's when we need to push on people to get stuff in. But the input part, because when we come to that part on the timeline, the week of, when we put down engagement, when we're going to be here, when we're going to be meeting with groups, we put the week of the 6th or the 13th. The 6th doesn't work, because this was when we thought we were meeting on the 17th. So it would really be the week of the 13th that we would be doing the input. So the survey going the 2 weeks works fine.
Thank you. Okay, back to you guys.
Okay, so the next part of this is the publication dates, the timeline, that kind of thing. So that timeline is really the next thing we kind of work through. Right now, the publication dates for AXA, that's the statewide administrative publication for administrative jobs, is going to be February 13th and February 20th, and that works fine. We're not behind schedule on that. That works out perfectly fine. The stakeholder input really is the week of the 13th. Next week's too soon. It takes some time to organize that. The closed session dates, this is the date when the closed date when we would application, we're right now saying the application deadline is March 6th. It'll be 2 weeks, been advertised, it'll be at least a week after that. That's a good time frame. Once we have any of this tomorrow, it'll go up on our website that this is the deadline for applications. They know we have the search, but we haven't put any specifics in because we didn't know. But as soon as that's up, that'll start the request for applications, and then they'll know what their time frame is, and we'll know when the ads are going to be in the EdCal, and the deadline will be March 6th. We'll do all the reference checking. It takes us a while if we're going to do it right. So right now, we're saying somewhere the week of March 20th or the 27th, we would have a special closed session meeting with you to review all the candidates. Prior to that meeting, so you will get a link to a portal for all the applicants. You'll get to review them all. There may be some will say, a principal applied for the job. That probably isn't going to happen. A principal becoming a superintendent doesn't typically happen that often. So you may not want to spend a lot of time on that application, but the other ones, you're going to be able to read everybody's. So that might take a little while because you probably have a lot of applicants, but it's better that you have that ahead of time. Then we'll have an actual meeting with you. It takes about 3 hours where we go through everybody. And we're going to recommend who we think matches the best and who we think you might want to interview. Ultimately, that's your decision. So we will work through that whole meeting with you, but you will have had a chance to review them ahead of time. That saves a little time. Our assistant, Penny Pyle, will send you that link. There'll be some things about it that will remind you, but it's a very confidential process. So when you get them, you're not starting to call on the references. That's our job to do reference checking. We know people might Google, but please, those are highly confidential. You may well have people who are currently superintendents who do not want it public that are applying for another job. So you have to be really conscientious about that for us. And we've had boards not do that, and candidates have backed out of the search because they want it confidential. So we'll kind of work through that process for you. So sometime that week, we would need that kind of a meeting. So that's really the first big date we have to make a decision on.
So Peggy, I noticed that the March dates are a Monday and the April date is a Saturday. Is that preferable day?
So Saturday, we usually do the interviews all day on a Saturday. It takes all day. I don't know what your personal schedules are. Some boards can get away and do all day Friday and Saturday. That's the part we haven't determined yet, but it takes a whole day at least. A lot of districts do it 2 days.
I'll open both of these up to the board. Sophia Say?
Again, this is regarding confidentially information. When you send the when you have the candidate there, right, for us. So once we reviewed it, and then we might know the person. I mean, I understand, I appreciate you the one checking the background. However, there are some inside information some folks may not identify it. And then if we overheard things about the candidate has some issue with the staff, with the management people, what is our role on that part?
You call us.
We'll call you.
Call us.
I appreciate it.
If you hear
Just-
anything that's concerning, we may have already heard it, and we just haven't met with you together, but
Okay.
call us with anything you have on any of that. If you hear of a candidate who might want to apply, just call us. I think the more neutral you are during the process, the easier it is for you when you have to make that tough decision.
Yeah, I want to explain to the public, especially our president just mentioned very beginning, transparency, that's most important
Absolutely.
things that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Even the email that we should forward to you if anyone emailed to us to
Exactly.
something. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, President.
Okay, Dr. Rios.
My comment is about the day. I would advocate for a Saturday, not only because, Friday's a working day for me, but I would imagine that so it would be for our candidates.
Are you talking about the meeting where we just review the candidates
Yes.
before you decide who you want to interview? Okay,
Yes.
sure.
So it's open to the board for discussion. Why don't we take the March date first and decide on that? I'm good with a Monday or a Saturday, I guess.
Oh, no, sorry, let me clarify. No, I'm talking about the interview date.
Okay, so
The
that's
all
on a
day.
Saturday.
A Saturday.
Oh, I thought you were discussing about a Friday
Yeah,
or a
right now,
Saturday.
we're really just talking somewhere between the week of March 20th or 27th to have a meeting. It could be the evening, it's easily an evening meeting. I said week of March 20th or 27th.
Okay.
So it's any time during that week. Some boards have a typical night they leave as their a potential for a meeting. So it's any one of those dates between the 20th and week of the 20th or 27th where you would like to meet in closed session. Then again, that's about a 3-hour meeting.
That including the weekend, Saturday.
There could be a Saturday if you want to do a Saturday for that. Some people like to do that when it's just in an evening meeting, and some people start at 4 o'clock, if that works. Again, it's your schedules that we need to be conscious of.
So we do have a board meeting that week on Tuesday, March 21st, so that day is out.
Right.
Do we want to do Wednesday that week, back to back, or?
Wait, I thought we were talking about Saturday.
Well, we're talking about March 20th through the 27th for this meeting, so any day that week.
Monday, Wednesday is a little bit hard for me. I teach on Wednesday evening class, will be ended up class around almost 8 o'clock.
And again, this is where you, the trustees, are reviewing the applications with us and then determining who you want to interview. You will see these applications typically 3 or 4 days prior in a read-only process electronically.
How about Thursday night, March 23rd?
I have no problem with the Thursday.
So are you good for the Thursday or no? Okay, Sue?
I would recommend to do it early as possible to review the applications before the interview, which is if we can just put it in between March 20 to 24th that week, before or after the board, that would be good.
Okay.
So Monday, Wednesday is out, then maybe Thursday. Thursday's okay,
But we
23rd,
also have to think about, is this evening or daytime?
evening,
Evening.
Okay, evening.
23rd?
So Thursday, March
Are you
23rd.
Dr.
okay?
Oak, are you okay?
Yeah, well, that's the week we're talking about.
Yeah,
So,
I think
yeah, the
Dr.
week of the 20th.
Apodaca was not.
So it's going to be almost impossible probably for all 7 of us to...
You know, I work on the schedule with you. Maybe I can move my
What about
class a little
Monday, the
earlier.
27th?
Can
No,
we-
just so we're clear, we can do it the week of the 27th also,
Yeah, so
sometime that week.
Okay.
If we do 27, what is the best time? Can we do a little later? Or how late we can?
How about Tuesday, the 28th?
Actually, I prefer the
I'm okay.
23rd.
23rd, okay?
The March 23rd?
This
Think
is
of
just
spring
me
break for
personally,
UC.
I really think it's pretty critical of all of you here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so...
I mean, I think this is a big decision on who you want to
Let's
interview.
keep working
Can
on
you
a
do
date.
20?
let's have Chris give us a date that works
Yeah.
for him.
I'll work with you guys.
Can you make it on Tuesday? Well, can you make it on Tuesday, March 28th?
Yeah.
Can you make it on Tuesday, March 28th?
I can. Oh, 28th? Yes, I can.
Tuesday,
The
March
27th,
28th.
no.
Everybody currently
Tuesdays are
here?
good.
But
okay
that's
with
not
that?
there.
Wait, Tuesday, March 28th or 20th?
Tuesday, March 28th.
I thought they're
28th?
scheduled 20 to 27.
Well, she said we can push into...
We can push
the
it?
following
Okay.
week.
I prefer March 20th, but
Okay, so what day of the week is that? Monday?
that's a Tuesday, Monday.
Okay.
Monday the
Is everybody
20th?
available Monday, March 20th?
What time?
It would probably be between 5 PM and 8 PM or
That's great.
6 and 9. Okay, Sophie?
I'll switch the schedule for my teaching. Let me try
Can
it.
you?
I have to try it.
All right, so Sue?
Yeah.
Okay,
20?
so
Okay.
we'll tentatively set it for Tuesday, or Monday, March 20th at, what time?
What time?
28th, right?
Yeah,
About
20.
3 hours, so if we do 6,
6.
20.
6 would be ideal.
Monday, March 20th,
6 PM.
6 PM.
6 p.m. should be okay.
Thank you for being flexible. Okay, so that's that. Do we now want to talk about the special meeting with the board interviews, which probably should be on a Saturday because it's all day? They have April 8th. Should that now be,
You talk about the interview?
We can move that one. We wanted to make sure we're around, we know you probably have spring break and there might be some issues in that. With us doing the 20th, the tight part is between closing and the 20th, but we'll make that one work. Think we can? Okay. We'll do fast reference checking, no. So we actually, anytime after, we can't do it, if we're meeting on the 20th, obviously the 25th is too soon, because we have papers and stuff materials to get together. We thought the 8th was a better date, potentially, if that works. And then I think the conversation really is, do you want to try and do it one day? Do you want to do a day and a half, which means you'd move into Sunday? So the challenge is the process. Let me work through the process. That might help. You're going to let's say you have 6 candidates to interview. We'll pick a number. And that's going to take from 8 in the morning or 8:30 in the morning till probably 4 or 5, 4 in the afternoon. You might be down to the final 2. Some boards like to go ahead and make that decision in one day. Some people feel like they need to think about it further and they want to come back the next morning and interview the final 2. We won't know for sure where you are until we see the pool. So we have some time to say what dates, but in your heads, you might want to think a day and a half, just to reserve it.
I just want to make sure you have enough time for the reference checks, because that's
Right.
critical for us.
Well, the reference checks will be between when it closed on the 6th and when we meet with you on the 20th.
Okay. Dr. Rios?
So just to note that April 7th is actually a holiday for ABC, and so I think that week of the 8th would probably be definitely not. The offices are closed.
So like
Starting-
April 1st, maybe?
So, I don't know if that's too soon, or I would push for
That's
after
pretty
the
soon.
14th, which is when our spring break is over. And that's also Easter weekend, I believe.
So our
Okay.
spring break is April
7th?
7 through that,
14th.
so it's
The
kind of bad
14th.
timing, but
Either April 1st or the 22nd.
The first is going to be pretty tight if we meet with you on the 20th to prepare all the materials, I think.
Yeah, we prepare a binder for you that has a lot of the information,
No,
particularly.
that's earlier. This is the packet for all the questions.
Okay, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The
Is-
binder's earlier.
Right.
is anybody on the board not available Saturday, April 8th?
I can't, because I cannot. I'll be out of the town that whole week.
That's
Okay.
like the day before Easter.
Yes,
Yeah.
they book, yeah.
Are people available Saturday, April 15th?
I won't be back.
Yeah, that's like the spring break.
Yes, the spring
or-
break, okay, yeah.
Okay, so now
22nd.
you're talking
22nd?
April 22nd. Is that
Right.
too late?
The 15th is not available?
They said no.
15th?
But I don't think it's late, I mean,
Well,
Yeah, because in between that,
Still
April
April.
10th, 14th, I mean, if you look at April 10 and 14 to May 16, there's
Only
a, quite a break room there, the time.
How about the 15th?
I won't be
15th.
back.
someone said no. She's out of town.
That'll be out of town.
I think we have, if I may?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have time. I mean, ideally, our superintendent isn't going to start until July 1st.
Right.
So that gives us all of April, all of May, all of June. So I think pushing it up towards like the 22nd, I mean, I would advocate for
And you,
that.
you look the time frame between the April, May 2023 to contact approval, those, we do have time there.
We have a month.
We have a month, yeah, April 10 to May 16. So I definitely say April 22nd should be a good day to shoot.
Is anybody up here currently not available Saturday, April 22nd? Two of you?
I have drill.
Okay, so that's out.
Oh, my God.
29th.
We,
How about the,
can you not do things on a Sunday, Sue?
I could do Sunday.
Okay. Well, Sunday's on the table.
23rd?
How about Sunday, April 16?
We do it like in the afternoon.
I
like,
won't be here.
You know, more
I
like,
won't be
It's a
back.
full, it's a full day.
Yeah.
And it's
16th
candidate
is a
interviews.
Sunday.
Have you ever done them on a Sunday?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, 16 open. I'll be back. I should be back, yeah.
Chris, is that a drill weekend? Is everybody available Sunday, April 16?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll tentatively set for April
16.
16. Does that work? For Leadership Associates? Okay. Well, that was easier than I thought. Thank you. Yeah, what would we do, 9 a.m. or?
Yeah, we usually start pretty early because it's a long day.
Well, let's do
And you'll
8.
have to realize that you're going to have to get through it in one day.
We'd
You
like to
won't-
get through it in one day, right, since it's a
Yeah.
Sunday, because then you're pushing back a week or,
Yeah.
or, no, they said it can go into a second.
If you go
day.
on a Saturday, you can push it into Sunday, but if you start on Sunday, it's a little hard to push to Monday,
So 8 a.m.
Sunday morning.
Yeah,
We'll work out that
Okay,
schedule,
so,
we know, yeah.
So
We
are we
might do
available?
Sunday, and then Monday evening, just to have maybe a second interview if you want that.
Okay,
So is April 15, anybody can? Because
That's-
I can fly
that's,
back
that's off
earlier,
the table.
off the table, because she was talking about, I mean, on 22nd, April.
Two people can't do it
22nd,
on that day,
23rd.
Sophie.
Oh, okay.
15th?
22nd?
No, it was
April
22nd.
22nd.
Yeah, 22nd was, but the 15th was okay.
Oh,
That was, I think 15th was more like Sophie, right?
Yeah, I can fly
Do you
back
want to do the
earlier.
You're
16th, or do you want,
available.
I'll change my flight to back earlier.
did you want to move to the 22nd, a Saturday?
Well, I think there's some conversations about possibly the 15th.
okay, I thought
Which is
someone
a-
wasn't available. Is everybody available on the 15th of April, which is a Saturday?
I'll just change
It was
that.
just you, but if you're
Okay,
willing
I'll
to,
change it. I'll
Yeah,
come
just
back.
the
I'll come
15th.
back early.
Yeah,
Okay.
come back early.
Just the 15th.
so
The only 15
Saturday,
was-
April 15th.
We can go to church.
Okay.
Okay, so that's better in case we had to go into Sunday.
15th, just too early.
April 15, 8 a.m.
And we'll work out that schedule when we get close,
Okay,
all right?
that's settled for now.
The validation process, just real quickly, we don't have to determine that now, but because you don't know who your candidate might be, but you may be wanting to go to another district if the candidate's an outside candidate to talk with their district. It's a half-day visit. We work out the details with you on that once you've determined the candidate. The target date for offer of employment, once you've determined who your candidate is, we ask the candidates ahead of time to provide us what we call the contract parameters. What, do they want a 3-year contract? They want X amount for salary, whatever it might be. And we have that in mind. So when we come into the interviews, we know what they're looking for. We will already have reviewed your contract. We'll need to know whether you're kind of in the same ballpark salary-wise, all of those kinds of details. If there's something in the current contract you don't want to continue, we'll want to know that so we can talk that. We can also work, if it works, similar to what you did for the search process, is to work with a subcommittee of the board on those kinds of details. It's up to you to help us with that. But we'll know ahead of time what they're looking for. So when we come into the thing, so once you've got that person you want to hire, we're going to say, before you leave that day, you're going to have said, okay, yes, and then we turn it over to you with your attorney. A lot of times boards will get their attorney to go ahead and do a draft of the contract, sort of a fill in the blank, if you will, so you can have your attorney have that ready. So that's prepared, and then once you've got that, that goes back and forth a little bit once the day is over. That candidate might have somebody look at their contract as well, and then they'll say yes, and then you have to put it on for an agenda for a regularly scheduled meeting to approve the contract.
Okay.
So,
Sue, you have a question on this one?
No.
Okay.
Candidate recruitment, just know that, as we said earlier, if there's anybody you think don't let them contact you, tell them to call us. We'll put it on our website. We have about 12 other partners in our firm. We talk on the phone every 2 weeks. We talk about what the searches are. People give us ideas. They help us help vet candidates. They say, I know this person, they're going to be interested, they're great, or don't, or whatever it might be. But so we use our own internal network as well to help us know who candidates are out there that might be interested. Okay? I mentioned the contract parameters of the contract things. So our last thing.
Well, prior to just the last thing, number 10, you'll see there on the agenda. Any other questions or points of clarification up to this point in time? If not, then I'm going to be asking.
We do have one comment.
Yes,
Dr. Rios.
And this may be me jumping ahead, but is there a point where you limit? I mean, we expect a lot of interest. Is there a point where you limit the amount of applicants that?
Nope.
No? Thank you.
Well, they will dwindle the list down, right?
Yeah, we typically, for a lack of a better description, we would create or provide tiers. Here are the Tier 1 candidates for the board to consider. Here are the Tier 2. Here are the Tier 3. Tier 1 obviously being what we consider to be the best match and fit according to your position description and the characteristics that the board and your stakeholders are desiring. Tier 2 might be right on the edge. Tier 3 would not be what we would call candidly anybody that we would consider, that the trustees consider.
Sue, you?
Just to clarify, since we have the interview on April 15th, so the completing the validation process will be pushed back to the following week?
Yeah, it'll move
Right.
a week,
Mhm.
at least a week after.
Okay.
I'll adjust that.
Sophia Say?
There's just kind of a question about what if we have an employee within would like to apply the position and they need to go through with you. Am I correct?
I'm sorry.
They will have to go through with the,
They would have to
you
fill out an
folks.
application.
what if towards end we decide, I mean, just potential, we, instead of you give all the candidate we interviewed and we decide to hire our within, well, what's going to be, I mean, board decide, I'm just saying potential. We decide to hire someone, we feel that that person will best fit for our school district instead of all the people you provided to us. Are we violate anything on that matter?
violate anything? No, absolutely not. That's the opportunity to compare and contrast to the pool of people that the trustees plans to interview. So you're looking for the finest applicant, obviously, and so that comparison and that contrast opportunity with any internal candidate would take place just as if they were in the general pool of applicants.
Thank you.
And Dr. Verdugo, I want to make a comment for the public that's listening. If an internal candidate wanted to put in, they would apply solely through your company, through online mechanisms. Nothing is going through our staff here at ABC. It's all independent. You would vet them like anybody else. They'd interview like anybody else, and then the board will have no knowledge of that, and we'll make a decision once everything is compiled. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, President Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
Dr. Apodaca.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to add on to that, that candidates are discouraged from contacting us as a board directly. So everything needs to go through this company. We as a board individually don't have the ability to sway one way or the other. So that, and it's, everybody should have a fair shot. So we as a board will not have any knowledge and cannot recommend individually or directly any other candidates, if that's correct.
That is correct, Dr.
Okay.
Apodaca, and to go even further, that information, that statement, if you will, is on the application itself, that no potential candidate can or should, I should say, contact any board member whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Clerk Nishii.
And theoretically, we could actually look at the candidate pool and say, we don't like any of these.
That's correct. Yeah, and again, the luxury or the advantage is that you're going to see all of the applications, again, maybe 3 days prior to the candidate selection date that we've selected. So you'll have an opportunity to review those and get a stronger sense of what you feel are good candidates. And of course, they may or may not match up with the tiers that we're going to be developing for you as well. But that opportunity is really a great opportunity to ask questions, inquire with us, what did we find out, what might we know a little bit more about that candidate. And so we're really providing you our reference information.
So just 3 days, that seems like a lot to go through in 3 days. Do we have a little bit more time?
Is it possible to have more time between us getting the applicant list to review?
So for example, if I get a sheaf of documents like this thick, 3 days, I would have to quit work and just do this.
I would say at this point in time, 5 days would be stretching it, but 4 days I think would most likely be adequate. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's the case, we're already going to be providing you some of that information in those tiers. So, as Dr. Lynch mentioned, should it be a site principal that's applying for a superintendency, you may not want to give that much consideration simply because that leap of skill set is, that gap is quite significant as compared to those people who might already be sitting superintendents or deputy superintendents or chief academic officers, this kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like 4 days.
Okay, if we could get 4 days, that would be excellent. And my last question or comment is, in your experience, how many candidates should we expect, and then how many would be in Tier 1?
That's difficult to say, President Beach, in that our anticipation is that you're going to have, I'm taking a guess at this, but you're going to have between 25 to 30, perhaps 35 applicants for ABC Unified.
Okay.
Dependent upon the candidate selection process that we have on that one evening, you may boil it down to 6. That indicates to me right away that it's going to be a long day on that Saturday, but nevertheless, we're very, very flexible. Should the board prefer to interview 4, that's the decision that you folks would make. 7, again, that's the decision you would make. We would try, however, to guide the board with respect to the amount of time that you need for not only the interview process, the amount of questions that are going to be asked of those applicants, but also the deliberations that take place as well.
Sue, you?
I was going to ask, for the survey, is it all set, or are there a few categories that we may recommend?
Categories with respect to what you would like to add as a question to the survey? Those can certainly be added.
Okay.
Because one thing that I did wanted to add to the desired professional leadership characteristics is the business administration and decision-making communication. So I will maybe email to both of you.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Clerk Nishii.
Just really quick, so will we be given like a rubric and a scoring criteria and things like that? And
On the day of the interview?
Right.
That is correct, yes, sir.
All right, great. And then sometimes they have set questions that we're going to ask everybody the same questions.
Yes.
It's going to be just like a civil service almost?
Basically, yes. You will have scripted questions that are asked of each person who's been invited in terms of the pool of candidates that you are going to be interviewed. On that first session of questions that are being asked, every person gets asked the same question. It's a progressive ranking process, and we provide you not only the questions, but we also provide you a packet where the questions are delineated and space for your comments for your own reflections. And there's a scoring box, if you will, but then the most important thing, of course, is following the interviews, we begin to facilitate the deliberations.
And we could do follow-up, and that could be more individualized, correct?
The second set of questions, let's say theoretically that the board determines that they'd like to see 2 finalists out of a pool of, let's say, theoretically 6 people. The questions then are much more flexible. There may be some trustee that wants to have one of the questions that was asked in the first process expanded upon, or you may want to develop and design some other questions that each board member might have. Tell us a little bit more about your hobbies, your family. You mentioned that you were involved in equity and diversion and inclusion, or equity and inclusion and diversity. Can you tell us a little bit more what that looked like? So the questions on the second portion, again, let's say theoretically that you have 2 finalists, are much more flexible and open-ended, and you can ask different questions of each of those 2 people.
It's also a chance for them to ask you questions. So it becomes more of a dialogue, because this is a partnership, so they've got to feel comfortable too.
But we shouldn't be asking any follow-up questions in the first round.
Right.
In other words.
Correct. You're going to be scripted to those questions only that are being asked on the first round. Yes.
Sometimes we'll talk further about that when we get there. There's some maybe, and you're going to have a chance to look at the questions.
Yes.
So you're going to tell us they're the right questions too. But we want to, there may be something like, a follow-up, I didn't understand that statement. There could be that kind of thing. But creating your own questions during then makes it uneven playing field for the candidates.
Dr. Verdugo, who creates the questions?
We will provide you standardized questions to a certain degree, but those questions are really going to be somewhat customized to what we're hearing as it relates to the stakeholder input, the characteristics that you're looking for. But the approval process, the addition or deletion of those questions is still up to the trustees.
Okay, and do you find that that works well? Because I've heard from other people, and I'm not claiming anybody on this board would do that. Questions get leaked, people learn what the questions are, it might give an advantage. Have you ever come that morning with the questions and the board hasn't seen them?
No.
And we get them and do them?
No. We want to get your approval on the questions accordingly. Should one board member feel that there needs to be more of an emphasis on fiscal management, for example, or perhaps social emotional learning for students and adults, then that question can be embedded into the list of questions. I would say, generally speaking, you're looking at between 12 to 14 questions with an amount of time that's allocated to these interviews individually. It could be 55 minutes, it could be an hour. We time them, we facilitate that. It sometimes seems to be a little bit more assertive, but nevertheless, we keep the candidate or the applicant on time. We may say, candidate X, you're on question number 10, and you have 10 minutes left, and there's 14 questions. We also provide the questions at the seat or at the site where that person sits so that they can refer to them should they need to.
So 12 questions would be about 5 minutes answer per question, and that works well?
It has.
The other thing we'll need to do on this is decide where you want to interview. It's a Saturday, so if you're at the district office, it's okay. This is probably not the best setting for the interview. You'd want to be in a room, maybe likely where, that kind of thing. And we'll work out the logistics on that as we get close to it. But when we're interviewing on a weekday, we usually recommend you find an alternative location so staff isn't around when the candidates are arriving, that kind of thing. But on a Saturday, it works out fine.
So you've seen our conference room, that would
Yes.
probably work well?
Yeah, and we'll just need another room for the candidates to wait that we can go back and forth. Yeah.
And is the board going to be in there in closed session?
Yeah.
So
Closed session.
you won't be in there, or?
No, we're in there.
We're in there as well.
And we may decide after looking at that, that may not work as well because we're in the room and we need someplace to sit so we can go in and out. So it's usually better if it's a little bit bigger room, squarer room, if you will. But I'm sure, judging from this facility, you probably have a room we can use.
Yeah.
But we'd work with Danielle and
This can be closed off as well, and?
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And trustees have sometimes determined that the venue should be a local hotel, for example. There might be food services available there for the early morning continental breakfast, as well as the lunch break, and perhaps even a dinner opportunity. So some of those logistics we would work out with Danielle. However, this room most likely would work, and as Peggy mentioned, a Saturday would be convenient. We do need a spot or a place, typically it's either Peggy or I, who will meet the candidate. We will take them to an isolated room, then we will call them in, make introductions accordingly. We'll talk a little bit more about that day, because we have an orientation meeting on the day of the interview itself. And then we would exit that first candidate out a separate door while the second candidate is waiting in another room.
That sounds
Actually,
excellent.
we like to have the executive assistant check them out, make sure they're okay before we interview.
Okay. And my last question, actually, I'll take Sophia Say.
Back to 12 questions that do you email to the people or you don't, right? I'm glad. I'm really glad.
They have them in front of them when they sit at the table.
No, I'm talking about to the board member,
Oh,
to the
to the
board.
board
If you
members,
wanted
we'll
to
do that.
review that first.
We'll do that. We'll send it out to you, but then we'll discuss them at our meeting when we pick the candidates you want to interview, at the candidate review.
Okay.
You'll determine the questions that night.
You'll
Okay.
finalize them that evening, and that's the materials that we'll have available on the day of the
Present it
interview.
to us.
Okay, so that was going to be my last question, thank you, is that there'll have to be consensus or majority to change a question, right? One board member can't say, I want this question, and then it gets put in.
That'll be up to you to come to a
Yeah.
conclusion.
Okay.
But typically, we really do try to make sure the questions are relevant to what your district is looking for. So so some of them are probably, you know what your first and last questions are probably going to be in interviews typically,
Yeah.
but it's the in-between that's going to matter. And it's really dependent on what we hear through the input.
Okay. Board member Suyu?
I was going to ask Danielle if you can email all the board members, Dr. David Verdugo and Dr. Peggy Lynch's contact info.
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
She'll have our emails and our cell phones.
Any other board questions on this? Seeing none, turn
All
it
right,
back
now
over.
becomes the good part. So now we want to do 3 parts, and I'm just going to take notes, and David can facilitate. And again, this is not the be-all, end-all list. If you think of something later, we can add it. But we want to know the characteristics, personal, professional qualities, experiences you want. We want to know what you see as the district's strengths, and we want to know what you see as the district challenges. So we're going to start with you on that, and we're going to start with this, what you want in the superintendent.
So Dr. Lynch will capture these as you provide that information back to us, or me in this case. But just again, to reiterate, desired qualities, characteristics, and experiential background. And if I may, I'll start with President Beach, and that'll maybe give the balance of the trustees a little time to think about or contemplate what that looks like. We sometimes try to trigger that or be a catalyst by saying we desire a superintendent who, or has, or is, and that might be the trigger to is a equity warrior, is experienced in academic success and achievement or closing the opportunity gap. So there's a variety of things that you folks, as trustees, have on your mind as to what you'd like to see in your next superintendent. Visibility, for example, that type of thing.
Okay. I'm happy to go first.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
suggesting me. I was going to go last, but that's fine. For me, and these aren't in any particular order, responsiveness to the board. You know, I think everybody would probably agree when we ask a question, it's because of a constituent. We would like an answer as soon as possible. I'd like to see a superintendent that gets things done, meaning if there's an issue in the community, we can get it solved quickly, especially when related to safety or other things. Hold people accountable. If there's a person in a position that's not doing their job well or, you know, getting a lot of pushback from the community, I think that person needs to be talked to, moved, or something happen. Community engagement is critical for me. That's why this whole process, we want to have town halls and be transparent. And then I think integrity and honesty are a must with that position. As far as the district strengths and challenges, I think we're a very diverse district. We've been in very good fiscal position. We have a high rating. We have academic excellence. We have one of the #1 schools in California and the nation. And I think our schools are pretty safe. We've spent a lot of money on safety recently. We've made that a high priority, and I think we're pretty good at that. The challenges through the pandemic, we've lost some learning. Our test scores have gone down. We're trying to find ways to offer tutoring or weekend classes, summer school for all in person. So I think we need to make up, and I'm speaking personally as a father, my youngest for sure has fallen behind in math and different areas. So I think we need to get our students back up to grade level. So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges I see. That's all I have.
Yeah, and that's a great start, President Beach. It
I
absolutely-
just want to confirm a couple
Yeah,
things.
it absolutely is.
Loss of learning during the pandemic as a challenge. And what was the other one?
Let's see, what else did I talk about?
Sorry, I didn't type quite as fast as I thought I was going to type.
Challenges, I talked mostly about the learning.
Okay. And then for the strengths, high academic achievement, schools are safe, fiscally sound, I think you said one more.
Yes, diversity.
Diversity.
We're one of the most probably diverse districts in, I don't know, maybe the nation.
And you folks have always seen it as an asset.
Yeah.
Absolutely. May I next go to Vice President?
Yes.
Thank you.
You get to now call the order, so put them on the spot as you will.
Thank you. I think the person must be flexible and culture sensitive, and the relationship with the CSBA and the National School Board, I think that's important to me too. And I also want to,
Say it again.
relationship with the CSBA, California School Board Association, and National School Board Association. I also want to, that person must work with our union representative, because that's very important to me, because we've been have a really good relationship among our union staff, and that to me is also one of the major part that I'm looking for our future superintendent. I'd like to give to my other colleagues to have them do the presentation to what they want to. This is pretty much I want.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I ask, strengths and challenges?
The strength and challenge is what I see, the people that we passed being hired, they've been stay with us so many years. So the challenge for me is a new person come to our school district, how well they can, how work with the staff, work with the union. That's going to be a big challenge for me. Not familiar. I understand that they have experience as superintendent or assistant superintendent, but it's a different, our district. It's so different in here.
Very good. Thank you.
Any challenges, any other strengths you want to mention?
I think I mentioned I'd like to have my other colleague to say something about it too. That'll be fair.
Okay.
Yeah, we can always go back again. I have
Yes,
a list lumber
course.
things in
We
here.
can circle back.
Yeah, thank you.
May I go to Mr. Nishi, clerk?
Thank you. Characteristics, collaborative. They should be able to receive lots of information from a lot of different sources and not prejudge that information in advance. Data-driven is really critical. I think data-driven with principles are important. Oftentimes in this position, it's kind of, you see a lot of wind coming in and out, and that person needs to have a strong backbone, I think, because if you keep reacting to what you think is a lot of quick information, that's not as important as having a steady hand. I think that was the good thing about Dr. Sue. there's all kinds of maelstroms around you, and she would say, we don't need the instant answer, we just need the right answer. But also, I think we need to trust the board with more information, like a lot more information. As an attorney, I like to receive lots of data, information, evidence of why a decision was made rather than a black box. Yeah, I remember Dr. Sue being very decisive at certain points, not dithering, and whether I liked that decision or not, it was based upon a principle that I could honor and understand, and she would give her rationale for it. And she would stand by that decision. She would listen to other things and maybe address other issues, and I think flexibility is important, but being able to make decisions based upon what she knows in the community is right and wrong based upon our inputs. I remember she made some decisions that were like, yeah, this is wrong, and that was the decision. She made the call out after I made that comment, and I was impressed. There's not a lot of back and forth. There's a place for collaborative leadership and listening to everybody, but there's a point where you're going to be in the head of the storm. You got to be able to weather that and stick your course.
Absolutely. May I ask what you think in terms of strengths and challenges?
Strengths, we have a very strong and good community, I think. As like a lot of other communities, we have social media that can try to take people in different directions. So that's a strength and a weakness, right? Lots of information, a very well-educated electorate, and dedicated to the success of our kids. So we all have the same thoughts. We want to all make sure that our kids have the best education. How we get there is always going to be a challenge, and listening to all the millions of different voices is important, but not being driven by any one particular loud voice.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Dr. Rios, what comes to mind?
So first I want to make a comment. I try not to take offense to the comment earlier about principals not applying. I really want to encourage anyone who thinks that they can take our first district to a better place to do so. We currently have an interim superintendent who was never a principal, and I happen to know superintendents that went from principals to superintendents and are sitting in that job right now.
Meant to be an insult to anybody, but it is a big leap sometimes, especially this size district and the complexity of it, so.
So some of my desired qualities are leadership. Right now I'm reading a book by Stephen Covey about trust and inspire versus command and control. And I think that here at ABC that would be a highly desired on my part. Along with that, someone who's an educational expert. I think having a doctorate in education would be highly desirable. They need to know the ins and outs of education and stay current. As far as the challenges, I think that equity is definitely a big one. Some groups have historically done incredibly well here, as well as some groups have historically done not well, and achieved as a group. So to me, that's definitely a challenge. So I would, like to see someone who's worked in urban districts and has taken on those kind of challenges and experienced success. Another challenge, I think, is that, our schools, same thing. Some of them have done amazingly well. We have a number of schools that were listed as blue ribbon, whereas the exact same opposite is true. We have schools that consistently underperform. Yet we have a school like Artesia High School who, with, appropriate leadership and a lot of support, has done amazing things with those same kind of students. And so the students don't change, but, other factors do come into play that make a difference. So yeah, those are the desired qualities. I mean, I have a long list, but I'll keep it short for today.
Did you want to add any strengths?
So the strengths of our district, I think, is that you have we're big, so you have a little bit of everything. I think, somebody mentioned our labor partnerships. We work really well with our teachers union, and we have highly committed teachers, and we have people that have dedicated and committed to seeing our district succeed and are completely invested, starting with the board on down. So I would say that that's definitely a strength, and the fact that there's so much potential just like I said, that we have some schools that underperform, those same schools will win, STEM Olympics, or they'll win the Reading Olympics. So again, there's great potential here, all across the district.
Very good. Thank you. Member Yu?
Thank you. Thank you for all the guidance and information. It was very helpful. I think superintendent is like a CEO of a company, and I think that, in my opinion, having the leadership quality of a macro, being able to see the whole picture, able to quickly assess the situation, and coming to sometimes it requires quick decision making, and think on your feet and giving direction to the staff. I think those are important qualities, as well as micro, because this is education, supporting the staff and the entire the employees of ABC, as well as manage and holding them accountable. To be successful, we all need accountability. And understanding the consumer needs, meaning what are the needs of this district? It's diverse, but one thing that our district does attract, the strength is that we attract families who value education. They'll drive and they'll move into the district just to put their kids here. However, we are faced with the competition from nearby schools like Oxford, what have you. And through the pandemic, we did go through some shifts in. Before, we used to have more students from out of district. But that kind of reduced. So there's a need. And as a CEO, you don't have to be an expert in all the fields. You just have to manage the experts in each field and make sure that you provide the support and accountability and push, towards that. The strength in our district is definitely, the mentoring. I see how the 10 years that I've been here, this is my 10th year, teachers, you've been teaching for a while, then you are encouraged to, the principal position is usually filled, I think the majority have been filled by our teachers. And then they are mentored to pursue higher education and go for principal or director. So there's a huge camaraderie and loyalty and that whole dedication. You could kind of sense that in our district. That's another reason why we are attractive to many educators too. So we do attract good educators. We are blessed. And lastly, I'd like to emphasize the importance of communication. The ability to give direction, to communicate certain information to the board, to the community, because we do live in a social media age, and sometimes the parents know it before us because of the social media. So that aspect, I think we definitely always need improvement. That is it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Apodaca.
Thank you very much. For the superintendent, I'd say they have to be present at our schools, and I think that, not only is that something that would be nice, it's a requirement. Even our interim now is present, and by being present at the schools, getting to see the various communities, they understand the needs. I think it's also important for the superintendent to understand the history, not just of a specific culture, but the cultures within our district, right? So the various cities have folks going back generations, whether it's, Portuguese, whether it's Indian. So to understand within our communities the history of each culture and the families that have been here for generations. Communication is key. And even if it's to say, hey, I don't have an answer for you, but let me find out, I'll get back to you. I think as a board, we value that communication, especially if we're in a situation that requires a fairly quick response, even if it's a text message or let me call you right back, just giving us those expectations of this is what's going on, I'm not ignoring you. And there is a delicate balance of running the day-to-day, right? Because they're the linchpin between this governing body, where they're our sole employee, and they have to deal with this day-to-day, but then they also have to run an entire district day-to-day. And so having that balance is one thing, but truly, or being capable of it is one thing, but truly understanding that we are a very demanding board because we represent very different communities, right? All one school district, but we have different needs and we advocate for different, depending on the scenario or the season, we will be advocating for different things. And sometimes that advocacy will come to a head and could potentially, not necessarily conflict, but be of equal priority to all of us at the same time. I can't imagine how stressful it would be to be a superintendent on top of the day-to-day being present here to your employees, to your cabinet, to, somebody at a school who has an ask for you because you're the superintendent. They just so happen to leave some equipment out by the principal's office. Oh, no, we could sure, use some brand new gym mats or wrestling mats or things like that. I don't envy the person, but I can tell you what, after the ones that we've had to work with, I sure admire them. So I think understanding that balance is critical. Our district is innovative, and that ties into everything that we are. We're fiscally solvent and strong because of the innovations we've taken with mental health programs, with PlayWorks type programs, social emotional programs, even basic needs for the classroom, right? Recycling, to use things that we'd normally throw away at home for a science project or for some other type of creative science lesson. So we're an innovative school district. I would say that our challenges are definitely enrollment. That's something that coming into our current declining enrollment situation is something they're going to have to learn from day one and be ready to hit the ground running. Because we're already starting to deal with it and contemplate it, they need to be 100% proficient in where we could possibly go with declining enrollment. And it's not just a matter of marketing and getting more bodies here. It's the very real reality that we'll have to make difficult decisions in the coming days. Cost of living for our employees, that's a huge challenge everywhere, I know that. But specifically our employees, not just in California, but in Los Angeles County. You have folks that commute ridiculous amounts because they can't afford to live near their school site, which mitigates the whole point of having a great job in our district. And then finally, I would say, my biggest concern lately has been the spike in mental health referrals all across our district to our wellness coordinators as a direct result of being isolated for so long because of COVID, and how we're going to respond to that. I know that's not just our district, but it's on our watch and it's within our purview, and it will be squarely on the shoulders of the superintendent at our direction. And so I hope you were able to catch all of that. If not, I'm happy to send you the notes.
I think I got most.
But this is, I think, at the core of what somebody should pay attention to. And these are things that you can ask any other staff member or cabinet member. These are things that, for me, at least for me as a board member, I will never stop advocating for. So I hope whoever it is, when they listen, when they get this, they take it to heart that first and foremost, we're representatives, but we're advocates, and we will advocate for this. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Wanted to have an opportunity to circle back should there be any other questions or rather comments, though. So any board member at this time?
Yeah, we'll start with Sue Yu.
I just thought of, we could have all the differences, but I think character is very important. Yeah, honesty and character, because that's how you win trust.
Anybody else? Clerk Nishii.
So I like strong leaders, but also I like leaders that listen and enable each school have a strength of their own. So I noticed that each school has their own personality, and you need to be able to enable that, right? To get things out of the way, to enable that school to succeed in the culture that they have. That's going to be different. Leal is going to be different than Cerritos, which is going to be different than Hawaiian. They're all going to be different, and enabling them to being able to listen to that, and not thinking that I always have the right answers, but being able to collaborate with the board, the specific board members we have. We're not educators, but we do have an ear supposedly to the community, and being able to get that ear that we have, that specific unique outlook, and combining that with the data-driven answers that they know, and putting those things together, enabling people to work at their best. I think those are important characteristics that we need.
Yeah, I would agree that listening trait is imperative. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm surprised Dr. Rios didn't nudge you when you said we're not educators. Anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Rios, you're up.
I just want to share my enthusiasm as a board member. This is one of the most important jobs. This is why we're elected. And so I'm really excited that as a community, in a collaborative effort, we will all go into this endeavor together to find the next superintendent of ABC Unified. Thank you.
Vice President Say.
Thank you. You talk about the strength, also challenge to me is that almost together, same. I do want to, that person also have the recruiting and maintaining good quality teachers. You know, what is the idea about hiring within or challenge hiring outside? And the last part is I was wanted to know improving, I need to know the person have some kind of improvement academic performance, either under prepare or we have some, you know, our district, you probably know our district, we have really good school. We also have some school needs a lot of attention. So, but I do need to have someone which is strength and challenge on the both end. Because don't just focus on one side, but you also need to, which those kids has high achievement, but how we're going to maintain them. How can we help them go another level of the education? That's the person I think is a strength and challenge to me. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'd like to add one last word myself, and that's transparency. I think it needs to be a strength of our new superintendent, and it has been a challenge in this district. I grew up here. I have kids in the district, as do many, and there's an image from the community that this district hasn't put out information on sensitive things, and I know what you can and can't report, but we've talked about that, and I think we all agree that we could be a little more transparent, so that's key to me. Okay, we'll turn it back over to you for any final
excellent.
thoughts.
If I may, just outstanding traits, characteristics. You can begin to see that that profile is so very, very important for us to capture accordingly, and we will begin to blend that input from the various stakeholders, whether it's a DLAC group or whether it's a city councilman or whether it's a site principal or a cabinet member. I think you're going to begin to see some of the same aspects of what you discussed relating to not only leadership but management. They tend to go hand in hand. We often think that leadership is just a singular thing, but it's really a combination of items, and so that profile is very important.
No, I think it was great. I think I got everything pretty well. I typed relatively fast sometimes, but and I think, you know, once we finish, you're going to see this all, and you can think about, you're going to start saying the same things we are. I really appreciate the input and the ideas. I think, as we mentioned earlier, you're not going to have any shortage of candidates. We're very confident in that. You might have a tough decision, but that's part of the nature of this. And I go to your comment. This is probably the biggest job you have as a board, is to hire the superintendent. It's really probably it is your main job, right? Because you're wanting them to manage all the things you need them to manage, but you also have to put your trust in them. You have to be able to trust that they're going to communicate, they're going to be transparent, all the things you want. And that's, you know, sort of sifting through all that when you see the paperwork they submit in their interviews. But you also, and I said this, I think, when I talked to the committee, it's impressive to me how long most of you have been involved, or lived here a long time, or went to school here yourselves, or have, you know, all of you have kids, or that kind of thing. And the other thing I said to Dr. Verdugo when we got here earlier is, everybody I've met from Danielle on has been super friendly here. People walked in and said hello, introduced themselves, said we're glad you're here. Yoshi, who you know facilitated sort of the search selection process, or search process, came in. She was so excited to see me. She said, I have to hug you. I'm so excited. So I think people have been really receptive. When you've had somebody for 10 years, this is a big thing. It's, who's my new boss going to be? Who's the new person we're going to look at? And so it's a big decision for you, and we take it very seriously and work really hard to make sure you have the best people to talk to. So that's our commitment to you. So.
Well, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Leadership Associates, Dr. Verdugo, Dr. Lynch, you did a great job. We're happy to have you on board helping us through this difficult process, and it is the most important decision that we'll all make during our tenure. Okay, at this time, I'd like to move to public comments. Clerk Nishii, do we have any public comments?
Yes, read this thing real quick.
Okay.
Persons wishing to address the board should fill out a card. Well, there's only one person here, but placed in the silver tin. Speakers will be called in sequence during public comments section, which is limited to 1 hour. I think we can easily cover that, and each person to one presentation of 5 minutes unless the board wishes to waive the time limit. Those who have a group concern are encouraged to select a spokesperson to address the board. Persons wishing to address the board on a specific agenda item are limited to 5 minutes each and will be called to speak following the staff comments and prior to the board's discussion and taking action. But there's no action here. We're just, actually, this will be the conclusion. Adverse remarks about a person's race, ancestry, ethnic group, identification, religion, color, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender, mental or physical disability, or age may not be made. Please avoid remarks or charges which reflect upon the character, motives, qualifications, or ability of any school district employee. Concerns presented to the board will be followed up and addressed by the appropriate staff. So I don't see anything in the hopper, but people can come up and ask. Do we have anything? Do we have anybody online?
We do not have anybody online.
So I don't think there's anybody here to give public comment.
All right, well, at this time, I'd like to remind the public that this meeting was recorded and it will be available for viewing. I'd also like to thank community member Jim Giordano for being in the audience, and also Union Rep Tanya Golden. Thank you for being our two people in the audience. We appreciate it. And if there's nothing further, we'll adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
Second by Sophia.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.